Good morning, everyone. Once again, this is Rakhi Gautam from greytHR, the moderator for the session today. Thank you so much for taking out the time and tuning in. So today's webinar is brought to you by greytHR in partnership with Almaha Business Systems. And the topic for today is Oman Labour Laws, its implications for employers as well as employees. Now, before we start the session, let me quickly give you an overview of how this session will flow. So the first part will be a presentation by a partner, which will then be followed by a very insightful discussion on the topic with our expert, then followed by an audience Q&A. So I can say audience Q&A is where time is all yours. You can start putting across your questions and we will be sure to take them up towards the end. Also, this session is currently being recorded. So if you happen to miss out on anything, do not worry at all. We have got you covered. We will share the recording with you once it is done. And also, this session will be available on greytHR's official YouTube channel. So you can always go there and watch it later. Now, I think without any further delay, let me invite on our virtual floor today, Mr. Diljit Parayat, General Manager, Almaha Business Systems, for a presentation. Over to you, Diljit.
Thank you. Thank you, Rakhi. So I'll be sharing my screen now.
It's visible, yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining in. We are all here to listen to Mr. Ahmed Barwani, but I'll just take few minutes of your time to just run you through what Almaha Business Systems has been doing in Oman. We are a system integrator, and we were founded in 2018. We specialize in providing business and security solutions in Oman. We are working with the government and enterprise customers in Oman. Some of the solutions that we specialize include the time attendance system, which is very related with the HR policies and HR management. We do access management to buildings, access control to buildings, IP video surveillance, and visitor management. And with these systems, what we aim to achieve are advanced access control policies. So you have different buildings with different access control limitations. We could achieve that. Centralized management of all your premises, whether it is for attendance or access control. Complex policies for late in, overtime, late out, etc. Attendance on the move. Most people nowadays are working either at home or at office. So attendance on the move enables you to mark attendance from your mobile device. With the VMS, we have high-end recording servers, software for your CCTV cameras. Of course, with access control, it's also a part of visitor management, which we have provided to our customers. Visit approvals and modifications is another outcome. So you know who is coming to visit you in your building, and there is a seamless visitor experience. Some of the processes that we help automate are job process costing. So when there is a manufacturing scenario or like a construction scenario, there are many jobs happening simultaneously, and it becomes very cumbersome for the management to kind of estimate the cost. So that's something that we do. Payroll management, where we have our partner greytHR today, where we integrate the systems together to make it seamless. As well as canteen management, where you have if people are given out food coupons or other facilities at your company. The key outcomes of the systems are job and project process monitoring, job hours based on payment policies, project tracking, of course, customizable menu and menu schedule, cashless transactions for the employees, and food planning. One of the major part of the COSEX integration with greytHR is how from attendance capturing to payroll processing is integrated in a seamless way. So once the employees are punching in to the biometric device or the card reader, the data gets captured, and the engine processes the data, detects the leave, and gives the information to greytHR platform, which then computes the payroll seamlessly and generates the payslip as well as the SIF file that goes into the finance team to disperse the salary. It's a very unique system that we have developed, which is eliminating a lot of manual and clerical work. Some of the customers that we have been able to work in Oman include the Oman Oil, Talabat, all famous companies in the region. This is just to give you an overview about what we do. Our office is in Gala, and we would be more than happy to welcome our customers and showcase what we have for them. Raki, I think that's it from my side. We have our offices as well in all the GCC countries.
Sure. Thank you so much for that presentation, Diljit. So anybody in the audience, if you have anything, any queries related to your HRMS or payroll systems, we can connect, and we would be happy to help you with those. Now, quickly moving on to the highly anticipated discussion that we have today, which everybody is waiting for. So, as you know, today the webinar is on Oman Labour Laws, where we will be delving into the critical implications for both employees as well as employers. This session will cover essential topics such as the intricacies of employment contracts and agreements, the impact of the Omanization policy, and the newly introduced rights for employers. We will also explore employer obligations and responsibilities under the new law, as well as the penalties for non-compliance. So whether you are an HR professional, a business owner, or an employee in Oman, this webinar, I'm sure, will provide you with valuable guidance to navigate the evolving legal landscape effectively. And of course, to unpack all of that, joining us today is Mr. Ahmed Al-Barwani, partner and head of office Oman at Tamimi and Co. Thank you so much once again, Ahmed, for joining us today. Let me quickly take you all through his profile. So Mr. Ahmed Al Barwani, as I said, is the partner and head of the Oman office at Tamimi and Co. He's also a member of the projects, banking, litigation, rail and hotel and leisure sector groups. His particular expertise is in inward investment, corporate restructuring, corporate governance, and mergers and acquisitions. Ahmed's experience also extends to other practice areas, including arbitration in construction dispute, litigation, competition, tax and custom matters, banking, real estate and hospitality, and banking and employment. Ahmed also represented Oman government negotiating avoidance of double taxation agreements, free trade agreement with USA, and other construction and development agreements of infrastructure projects in Oman. So it's a pleasure to host you today, Ahmed, and thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us. Ahmed, you are on mute, I think.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and it's a pleasure today to have a discussion around the new labor law and the type of amendments that have been introduced to the Omani market, and what are the obligations of the employers and the rights of the employees, and the actions to be taken so far.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. I'm sure we've gotten the perfect person with us today, and everybody would agree with me on that. So let's quickly move on to the first question, which is, of course, the very basic one. What are the key recent changes to Oman's labor laws, and how do they impact both employers as well as employees?
Well, the new labor law actually has been waited for a very long time, because there have been a lot of changes, and those mainly reflected in the previous old law and in the judiciary system in Oman, which is the court judgments. And what has been done, actually, this is now all being codified and introduced in the new law. Most interestingly, which has been always raised by many investors and clients, is the question of redundancy. And the redundancy has been introduced by the new labor law as a ground for termination of the employment contracts. And that's as a result which may the employer or the company face when they have any economic circumstances, or they incur any losses as a business, or they close part of their business. That can be considered a ground to terminate the employment contracts for a number of employees, depending on the part of the business that will be closed. This ground was not available for employer previously, and therefore, under the old law, if such termination took place, it might be considered wrongful, but now it doesn't consider to be wrongful, and therefore there is no compensation which can be awarded to the employees. The second thing is the termination for poor performance. This ground was not available under the old law, which is mainly listed under Article 40, and the poor performance can be done upon the appraisal every year. There are procedures still to be followed, and the poor performance cannot be exercised immediately. A 6-month or a plan would need to be in place for the employee in order to progress, and that's to be agreed with the employer. During this period, the progress and of the employee would be monitored by the employer. If they meet the required standard or the criteria, then the employee should be retained and continue the employment. If not, then the termination can be considered valid. Unlike under the old law, such ground was not available, and the termination can only be exercised during the probation period, which is 3 months. Under the new law, this right can be exercised actually after the probation period, which is 3 months. There are other changes relating to the sick leave. The period for the sick leave now has been increased from 10 weeks to 182 days. The type of contracts as well, we have 2 types of contract, which is limited and unlimited contracts. For limited contracts, which is the fixed contracts, previously, if they are renewed for one time, they consider to be unlimited. However, now they need to be at least for 5 years in order to be considered unlimited. So after only the lapse of 5 years of employment, it can be considered to be unlimited. If it is for 1 year, it could be renewed for 3 or 4 times until it reaches the 5 years threshold, and then it could be considered unlimited. Likewise, with the parental leave, the period has been increased for both the mother and the father, which is now from 50 days to 98 days for the mother, and it has been introduced for the father to reflect 7 days, and that's a statutory right which can be exercised. There is also a cap on the compensation. Under the old law and the old regime, it used to be a minimum of 3 months, but there is no maximum cap. Now the new law, they have capped it at 12 months. So a 12-month maximum of salaries, or the employee can be reinstated in his position. So when a submission is made to the court, the employee can either claim to be reinstated or to claim compensation. And the compensation generally, it varies between 3 months to 5 months, but it may reach up to 12 months, which is the maximum. A key change relating to the working hours, it used to be 9 hours. It has been reduced to 8 hours a day, and now the maximum working hours are 40 hours in total. And again, that's applicable for Ramadan, which is now 6 hours a day. And that's lead us, of course, to overtime. I believe there is another discussion about the overtime, but the overtime is maximum of 12 hours, during which the employee can work for, and he's compensated 25 hours during the daily time working hours, and 50% in addition for the night hours. In relation to the gratuity, this is very important for expat employees. Now they have introduced what they call saving fund under the new securities law. This saving fund, as we know, it hasn't been launched as yet. However, under the new security law, there will be contribution from the expat employees to the saving fund, which will pay their end of service by the end of their employment contracts. Expats used to have 50% of their salaries for the first 3 months, and then 1 year, 3 years, and then 1 year after that. Under the new law, now it is calculated 1 month for each year. So the 3 years requirement has been now eliminated, and it is calculated in the base of 1 month for every year. The non-compete clauses, this is one of the term of the contract, which used to be in the employment contract. Now, the new labor law has regulated this, and they have provided for that it can be agreed in the employment contract to have non-compete, especially for employees who have access to the business and to the trade secrets of the company. They can be limited for a maximum of up to 2 years. So that's something, again, that's a lot of employer as well as employees are interested in incorporating when they're entering into the employment relationship. Again, now the entitlement to the annual leave, which is 30 days, it can be carried forward leave up to 30 days of leave to next year. So any employee doesn't have to take the annual leave every year, and he can carry it forward until next year. But then he cannot carry it again, and he has to take it up during the next year. So that's a relation to the, key changes. There are some minor changes as well, but for the interest of time, we thought those are the key changes that we need possibly to highlight.
Sure. Thank you so much for that, Ahmed. That was very insightful. And I think this is, all that we wanted to discuss is already discussed. So thank you so much for being so comprehensive, with the response. Let's quickly move on to the next one, which is, of course, when it comes to matters like, legal, we have to be very cautious, right? So what are the critical elements that every employment contract in Oman must include to be legally binding and to avoid any sort of repercussions?
Yeah, this question is always raised, and I understand number of employees, especially expat, face, and in order to avoid any risks or mitigate that, it's important for the employment contract to be in writing first, because we understand there are arrangements whereby they provide the service, they receive salaries, but unfortunately, there is no written contract. Everything is agreed verbally, and the employee can work possibly from outside or inside Oman without proper job description as well. And that's it's a practice in markets like Oman, but we are seeing that now start disappearing, of course, with the introduction of the new labor laws and regulations. Back to your question in relation to the key elements that need to be reflected and included in the contract. First, the name of the employer and the address. The employer need to have a CR, a trade certificate, and properly registered with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in Oman, and registered with the Ministry of Manpower as well as the tax authority, in order to ensure that the employer actually is fully compliant with all laws and registration in order to be able to operate. And most importantly, they have an account with a commercial bank in Oman, because some of these employers used to pay salaries in cash. They don't pay it. But now they have introduced a new payment system whereby the employer actually is obliged to make all the payments through bank accounts. And the Ministry of Manpower actually monitoring such payments. So the name of the employer is an essential information to be included. The name of the employee, his profession, his age, the job description, his qualification needs to be included in the employment contract, as well as the basic salary and the benefits and any allowances that he will be granted. Any terms relating to the employment contract and to the job description, as to avoid any disputes in the future or any issues, because it is often that the employers may ask an employee to do something which is not under the employment contract. And it's always the employment contract will be the document that can be referred to by the employer and the employee in order to draw the job description. And very important for the job description to be very detailed. Again, the notice period needs to be included in the contract. I mean, the labor law provides 1 month, but it is often to have it for 3 months in the employment contracts in Oman. That can be contractually agreed upon. It could be for 2 months or 3 months or whatever agreed upon, but it will need to be included as a statutory requirement in the employment contract. If it is not included, then it will be 1 month as provided under labor law. And anything which is the parties fail to include in the employment contract, the reference will be always the labor law or its regulations. Again, there is a very general provision in the employment contracts that the employees will need to respect and observe the morals, the ethics of work and of the country, as well as the religion, as well as any directives by the government. So that's mainly the key terms that we need to include in the contract in order to be legally binding, and then ensure registration with the Ministry of Manpower as well.
Sure. Thank you so much for that, Ahmed. Again, very comprehensive and very important that we cover all our bases when it comes to employment contracts, right? So thank you for sharing that. Moving on to the next question, which you did touch upon in your first response, but if you could just maybe elaborate a little more on this. What are the legal requirements for working hours, overtime, and rest periods in Oman? And how can employers effectively manage them? Because I think that is one of the pain point that happens generally. So
indeed, I mean, it is very important because we have companies actually who request the employees to work overtime. Now, especially in the oil industry, because countries like Oman, they are heavily dependent on oil for their economy and for their revenue. Now, the old law specifies 9 hours. The new law reduced that to 8 hours, and the employee has a right for a break for half an hour or 1 hour with a maximum of 40 hours during the week, as we have highlighted before. The overtime, I mean, in addition to the 8 hours, but not more than 12 hours, so we are talking about 4 hours, that will be calculated on the basis of 25% for any hours that's worked during the day. And for any night or evening hours, that's 50%. It will be in addition to the salary to be calculated. So we have those two methodology that the employers will need to compensate the employees. Now, if the employer asks the employee to work during his leave, then the entitlement will be 200%, or he should compensate him 1 day on lieu for that. Because with some industries, they may need the employee to work during their public holiday or during their weekends or whatever, and the law has provided for a compensation, for a formula for that. But the key is it cannot be more than 12 hours a day. That's the maximum.
thank you for highlighting that, Ahmed. Moving on to my next question, which is on Omanization policy, which is there and how it's evolved in the recent years. And also a second part of that question is, what are the key challenges that employers generally face in implementing it, and any strategies that you would like to recommend for those?
Yes, I mean, Omanization, as you have pointed out, has been there now for a very long time, actually. And what the government does, periodically, they issue regulations and decisions. Actually, recent one was only, I believe, 2 weeks ago, whereby they Omanize certain professions. and those will need to be Omanized. I mean, for employees who have already got a visa, they cannot be replaced immediately until possibly the expiry of the visa, if the employer decides not to renew. Generally, if they decide to renew, then the government tends to renew it for them, but not to bring new employees on the same position. Generally, the government, how it look at this at twofold. First, there is a general Omanization requirement as per the activity of the company. By way of an example, if it is in health industry, there is specific or percentage of Omanization compared to real estate, by way of an example. So they go with the activity of the company. Generally, it's 35, 65, or 40, 60%. That's the general for Omanization. Nonetheless, for some positions relating to admin, secretarial, HR, some of marketing positions, deputy general manager, and some. This have already been Omanized, and the ministry is taking the line that they will not accept any applications for labor clearance for those positions. Now, there might be some exceptions, but generally the ministry is now trying to restrict such exceptions, and it needs to be looked by a special committee in order to be granted such exceptions. For the technical jobs, for anything relating to sales or any special requirements for specific activities, the ministry still permits the employer to employ expats for those positions, and now they go by positions, especially in relation to technical requirements, whereby the Oman market doesn't have such experience. Then they permit the employers to employ expats. The Omanization, I mean, under the new law, if the employer wants to replace an Omani by terminating an expat, that's provided for as one of the ground for termination, although we don't see this is exercised much by the employer for various reasons. Employers look at expats, of course, as key of their labor workforce in order to run their activities and their companies, and they don't want to disrupt the business. Generally, they would have somebody Omani who is junior to work along with the expat to learn and to get the relevant experience. Our overall view of Omanization in Oman, they're trying to strike the right balance between that what the market needs and again what the the requirement to employ Omanis as well as a social requirement. They have struck the right balance more or less. Even under the new law, we are seeing that this has been reflected in the policies of the employer, because the employers will need to comply with the new law and to reflect the same on their policies, which a lot of companies and employers have done so.
Okay, thank you for that, Ahmed. I'm sure everybody's taking notes, because all the points that we are discussing today are very, very important, and it's important that you stay compliant and follow all these. So thank you once again for that. Quickly moving on to my next question, which is, as you did touch upon this in the first response, what new rights have been introduced especially for employers, and how do these changes affect the employer-employee relationship dynamic in Oman?
Yeah, I mean, under the new law, as we have highlighted above, now the employer has been, granted some rights in relation to exercising some of the powers over the employees, like relating to termination, relating to reduction of some of their leave, like the emergency leave. They used to grant them 6 days emergency leave. Now this has been removed, and how this affect the relationship, the employer as well as the employee. They have start reviewing their employment contracts because those rights or obligations have been impacted, and to the extent possible, they have amended the employment contracts. Although there is no obligation to do that, it has to be by mutual agreement. Although there are statutory requirements, but employers generally they want to stay compliant with the law. So we understand that's how employers approach these changes and those rights to be granted to the employees. Again, they have looked at their internal regulations, which is required by law to have internal regulations, which is the written policy of the company, like the health insurance policies and all other policies, and they have reflect that to stay to comply with the provisions of the new labor law. This is how the employers we see in they have dealt with those requirements. There could be additional costs to them, and there could be a reduction of costs in some instances. So that's in brief what has taken place.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. And just to, maybe a follow-up question to that, you did touch upon employee well-being and, safety, health as well there. So what specific obligations are you did talk about the, paternal leaves in the beginning, right? So if you could maybe specify on the obligations that the employers have under this new law changes, specifically for employee health, welfare and safety.
Yeah, I mean, it has introduced, of course, for the 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 employees the right, of course, to take the leaves now. For the parental leave, this has been increased to 98 days, and that will need to be granted to the employees. Again, the taking unpaid leave that's was not provided under the old law. It has provided under the new law, and that has been again obliged by the employer to provide it to the employees for these unpaid leave. Given that, of course, the employee has requested that. In relation to the welfare, they have to provide health insurance to the employees, and there is a health insurance regulations specifically that is regulated by the Capital Market Authority, which is now called Financial Service Authority. They regulated the health insurance, and it's again a good opportunity and business for insurance company to provide this coverage to the employees, which the employer has again to factor that in as part of their obligations in the employment contract under the new labor law.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, a follow-up question to this is when we talk about employee well-being, we also talk about making a psychologically a safe workplace for them, right? So, what protections are in place? Okay, hi. I'm so sorry for that. A bit of a network issue here. Let me just quickly come back to the question, which was, when we talk about employee well-being, of course, we also talk about making a psychologically safe workplace for them, right? So, what protections are in place under the Oman Labour Laws for employees in cases of workplace harassment or discrimination?
Well, now the new labor law very clearly and expressly states that discrimination has been actually, based on sex, based on, religion, based on color, based on, where the employee is coming from and which nationality. That is forbidden, and that could be used as a ground for termination if any employees exercise it or the management exercise it or carry that such acts on the workplace. Again, harassment and such acts has been provided for, and now they could be used as a ground for termination of the employment contract. They can be as well provided as a disciplinary proceedings in the internal regulations that can be reflected and dealt with. And we see a lot of employers actually, set out in their internal regulations in relation to the discrimination and harassment and how they are dealt with, either by the right of issuing a warning or suspension from work or termination or reduction of salary or whatever measures that can be taken. But that's has been covered and provided for under the new law.
Okay. We did touch upon employee termination in the beginning as well, but considering you also spoke of that just now, if you could maybe, elaborate a little more on this employee termination and what are the legal implications for employers in this case?
Yeah, I mean, the termination, there are a number of grounds that provided under the new labor law for termination of the employee. And that's, of course, reflected under Article 40, which is under the same old law. If the employee misrepresents to the employer or they give any wrong information about their qualifications or anything relating to their experience, which the employer subsequently found this is not right and doesn't reflect actually what has been presented, it could be used as a ground for termination of the employment contract. Again, if the employee commits any mistakes or done anything which has caused substantial losses to the employers and to his business, that's second ground that can be used for termination of the contract. Again, if the employees doesn't follow the instruction of the employer, usually that's relating to the health and safety of the employees that need to be strictly followed by the employees. If they are not followed as directed by the employer, that can be used as a ground for termination. If the employee is absent from work without any justification for a certain period, again, that can be used as a basis for termination. Or if the employee is convicted for any offenses or crime that he has committed, and there is a final judgment, again, that's can be used, as a basis. If the employee harasses the employer, as you have raised this question previously, that's another ground, for termination. Or if the employee doesn't fulfill his obligations as agreed upon by the contract, which is one of the essential and basic elements of the contract, the employer can terminate his employment of contract.
Okay, thank you for briefing that for us, and definitely helps a lot. Just one last question that I have for you, and then we can move on to the audience Q&A, which is we did discuss in length about the legal implications and what new changes have been brought in, right? So, what are the consequences of non-compliance with these laws, and how can businesses mitigate these risks carefully?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of penalties that are set out in the labor law. The penalties are mainly on the employer because they are administrative fines. And that's, there are various fines depending on the type of breach. So that's fines, which is administrative fines. And there is the civil liability. The employee, for example, if the employee was ignorant in handling his duties and it causes losses to the employer can sue him for these losses, and those losses can be quantified. If they cannot be quantified, the court may appoint an expert to quantify those damages, and then for the employee to make the payment or the compensation, if it can be attributed to him. That's a key in order to oblige him to pay. That's the main type of payment that will need to be paid by the employer and by the employees.
Sure. Thank you so much for that, Ahmed. Wonderful conversation that we had today. Thank you for all the insights and comprehensive responses, I must say, that you have shared with us. It helps a lot. And thank you so much once again. I saw one comment regarding a PPT presentation also. So what I can tell the audience is, because of such insights being shared today, this will also be turned into a blog, and we will be sharing that blog with all of you with Ahmed's information there, so you can always check it out, and you can always watch the recording later as well in case you have any questions. So that's about it. I don't see any questions right now from the audience, but if there's any question, because we are done with our questions, so from the audience, if you have any questions, you can ask them right now. There's an option of Q&A that is displayed on your screen. You can just tap on that and punch in your question, and we will be happy to take that out. And if there are no more questions, then I would assume safely that we covered everything, Ahmed, today. And thank you for sharing all that with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I am seeing one. So there's one question that's come in. Annual leave of 30 days. Is it working days or calendar days?
Calendar days.
Great.
Unless it is specified that it is a working day, it is assumed it's calendar day in all the periods that are set out in the labor law.
Okay. Thank you for that, Ahmed. I hope that answers the question for you. Yes, done. You have commented. Thanks. Okay. If there are no more questions, I'm just going to share one email ID with all of you that you can see on the screen. In case you want to connect with us later, you can write to us on this email ID that displayed, yasser.rafat@greytHR.com, and we would be happy to get back to you. Also, as promised in the beginning, a blog will also be published and shared with all of you. And this recording today will also be available on our official YouTube channel and will be sent to all of you on your email ID. So you can always watch it, share it amongst your colleagues and employees and employers to stay compliant in this ever evolving landscape of legal. So thank you so much once again, everybody, for joining in. Since I don't see any questions, I think we can conclude the session now. Special thanks to you, Ahmed, once again for taking out the time and joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Diljit, as well, for joining us today and for being our partners on this webinar. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Raki.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Once again, have a great day ahead. And we will be back soon with yet another interesting topic of discussion. Till then, stay tuned, stay great, and stay great with greytHR. Thank you so much once again.
Bye.